Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things, and welcome to the Books and Tea tag. This tag was created by Olivia Pope and she also tagged me, and I thought it was about time I did this because I do really enjoy books and tea, as you may guess from the intro that occurs in every one of my videos. Do you know how many different kinds of tea me and Nick have in our flat? 10. It's a lot of tea. So the premise of this tag is very simple. There are some kinds of teas, you match some books to go with the kinds of teas. One thing I have realised about the fact that to my new flat I only brought my absolute favourite books and books that I haven't read yet is that it makes doing tag videos really hard because I do not have the inspiration of turning to my shelf and seeing what's there because most of the books here I haven't read. However, I will do my best and try and use my brain, and so let's begin. First tea is breakfast tea. Very good kind of tea. A book that is a strong staple. Now for this, I'm going to go for Pride and Prejudice because Pride and Prejudice is one of my favourite books and it is for me a very strong staple. It's a book that I always enjoy at any time, that I'm always in the mood for, that I've read a lot of times and always still enjoy, and a book that I can dip in and out of, a book that I never get bored of. In the same way that I drink breakfast tea every morning, I could quite happily read a bit of Pride and Prejudice every day and be very happy because it is a brilliant book and it always makes me happy. Tea number 2, Earl Grey. A book that is a classic and sophisticated, but with a bit of a twist. Now, Earl Grey is my favourite tea, so I feel it is only appropriate that I go for my favourite book, which is Our Mutual Friend by Charles Dickens, which for me fits this quite well because it is a classic and it is sophisticated in that it is from the 19th century, which of course equals sophistication. It doesn't. It does have a bit of a twist for me in that Dickens, as always, writes with a very unusual writing style. It's very, very humorous and at times very light, but also it is a very dark book as well, and the central themes are basically death and money and how money is connected to death and waste and rubbish in a brilliant, brilliant way. I'm currently hosting a very long Victorian style read along of Our Mutual Friend, so I will link down below very many videos in which I discuss the book at much greater length. But suffice to say, it is my favourite book and I do think it is a classic with a bit of a twist. The third tea, chai tea. An exotic book set in a different country to your own. And for this one, I'm going to say Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie, a book that I really thoroughly love, and it is set in India, so fits with chai tea quite well. Midnight's Children is a brilliant, brilliant book. It is magic realist and it follows the life of a boy who is born in 1947, him and various other children that are born at midnight on the day that India becomes independent. They have these kind of weird special powers, and Midnight's Children is a brilliant book, and it's one of those books that made me really, really desperate to go to the place that it is set. I have not yet been to India, but I would really love to go. Next, Peppermint Tea, an invigorating book. I'm not actually the hugest fan of peppermint tea. However, in terms of thinking of an invigorating book, I'm going to go for Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, because although this is a dystopian book which is set about 20 years after 99% of the population of the human race have been wiped out by, one of those books that, despite being post-apocalyptic in many ways, it has a lot of hope in humanity, and I find that quite invigorating. It's a very, very uplifting book in many ways because although most people are dead, and that is sad, the way it deals with what happens then and the way that humans act after this huge event is just done brilliantly, and it's so perfect. It really has the right balance for me between sadness and hope, and there is so much hope in that book, and it's wonderful. Next, Green Tea, a refreshing and different kind of book. And for this, I'm going to go for John McGregor's So Many Ways to Begin, which I just finished about a week ago and is my favourite book of the year so far, I think. It's very, very good. I love John McGregor's writing. I've now read all the books that he has written yet, which makes me kind of sad, but he writes with a brilliant, very different, unique writing style that is just absolutely beautiful. And the other thing I love about his books is that they are all structured in such interesting ways. So Many Ways to Begin is about a museum curator, and the book is structured almost like a museum, so most chapters start with an object of significance that David finds in his house and examines the memories that this object holds and what particular time in his life this object is related to, which makes the whole book like a museum of memories, and it's just beautiful. John McGregor writes about life in the best way. His writing is so refreshing and so brilliant and just so good. Assam tea, the tea I'm currently drinking. A strong and rich read. This, I'm going to say Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. For me, Wuthering Heights is very rich in that every time I reread it, I seem to learn something new, and I've read this book a lot of times. I think it's probably the book I have read the most times out of any book, I think, because I studied it both at secondary school and at university, which means that I have read it a lot of times. And still, every time I reread Wuthering Heights, there are little intricacies in the language and in the ways the characters interact that I hadn't noticed before. It's such a rich, complicated book, and I know it's not for everybody, and I know it's an acquired taste, but it still remains in my top 5 books of all time, and it's Camomile Tea, a cosy bedtime read. For this, I'm going to say, in general, children's books, but especially Harry Potter. I do enjoy the Harry Potter series, and because I am very familiar with them and know them very well, they're those kind of books that you would want to have a quick read of before you go to bed. Rose Tea, a flowery and gentle read. I'm not sure I have read many books in my life that I would class as either flowery or gentle. Most of the books I read tend to be nice and miserable. However, if I had to pick one that I would class as gentle, I'm going to say Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte. In comparison to the other Bronte novels, although it does deal with some emotional strain, it is quite gentle and quite calm, and quite a nice place to start with the Brontes and with Victorian literature, because it is a bit calmer and it's quite a nice book. It's not my favourite of the Bronte novels, but it definitely is nice, and in that way a bit more gentle and a bit of an easier start into the Brontes' work. Milk, a book to take the edge off. For this, I'm going to go for Miss Pettigrew Lives for a Day by Winifred Watson, which is a wonderful, wonderful book, and one of those books that is really good to read if you are having a bad day, because it is so utterly happy and it has such faith in life. I've never read a book that was so utterly enjoyable. Like, there are so many books that I love that are brilliant that break your heart a bit, and Miss Pettigrew Lives for a Day is just one of those books that will put your heart back together, because it is so thoroughly enjoyable and beautiful and fun. It's about a woman who has spent her life being almost downtrodden and feels that her life is quite boring in many ways. She's a nursery maid and hasn't really enjoyed it, and by accident she ends up going and meeting a woman called Miss LaFosse by a coincidence, and Miss LaFosse basically takes Miss Pettigrew and for a day brings her into the world of the bright young things. It's like if a kind of unsuccessful Mary Poppins suddenly appeared at Evelyn Waugh. It's just great. It's so wonderful. And the final question, Sugar, a sweet book. This one I'm going to say Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell, which is a YA book that I do quite enjoy. It is a love story between two people who don't necessarily fit in that well where they are, and although there is a lot of problems, although they have quite a lot of family difficulties, especially Eleanor going on within their life outside of their relationship is done really well and is done subtly and cleverly, but also really sweetly, and they are a really cute, nice couple. And it's a very sweet book, even though it's not as happy as I sometimes think it is. So that brings me to the end of the tag. I'm going to tag some people. I'm going to tag Blatantly Bookish. I'm going to tag Jen Campbell. I'm going to tag Kate Howe. I'm going to tag Shout Amy. I'm going to tag Mercury Calling. That brings me to the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comments what is your favourite kind of tea, and I'll be back very soon with another video. Cheers.